I don't think that this conversation is had enough. It's not about feeling sorry for athletes, but it becomes their entire being. It becomes their entire identity.
How did you go from playing your sport, putting your entire soul and identity was a
Yeah.
footballer, when you stopped because you had to? When did this media personality start to come up and shine? Did you take the same approach that you had with football into that?
I said, I'm going to be on national television and I'm going to talk about sports. When the truck hit me, there was a split second. All I could think about was, just like I made football and soccer my identity became Sportsnet. And I quit my job at Sportsnet. I'm like, I'm going to start my own company.
On this episode, we're joined by the amazing Caroline Szwed, a former D1 soccer player at West Virginia University who turned her passion for sports into a career in media. You've seen her on Sportsnet breaking down the game with sharp analysis and personality, and now she's making waves in digital content. This episode was recorded virtually, but the insights and stories, all 100% real.
When this is gone, I die.
This is our first virtual interview. This is amazing. Really happy to have you here. Can't stress that enough. It's not too often we get to interview someone like yourself. We both work in the same industry, so I think that's really cool. I have so many different questions. First of all, how do you pronounce your last name? Because I've butchered it like 4
No
times.
worries. Well, thank you for having me, Warren. I'm so excited to be here. You and the team are amazing, and what you guys are doing with the message that you're conveying is very important. So thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And my former last name before I got married, Caroline Szwed. So for those of you in Canada who are watching, when I was a host at Sportsnet, it was Caroline Szwed. But now I am Caroline Salemi because I have been married since. So I go by Salemi.
Okay. Well, congratulations on
Thank
that.
you. Thank you.
Yeah, and this topic is obviously one that's very important to me, and I always like to start interviews with why, because I think why resonates with everything that you're doing. And the why for me was that there was no outlet, there was no place to really discuss what happens to an athlete, regardless of their success level, when they're done competing. And that's not for anyone to feel like sympathy for us or any of that. It's just more so, after you are done competing, it's really hard to move forward into any other discipline in life. And it's a process. And I want to talk about that process. So that's why it's important to us. I'd love to understand why athlete transition is important to you, besides me asking you to be here.
Oh my goodness. This to me, I was just talking to my dad kind of off camera, and I said, I'm excited about this podcast because I don't think that this conversation is had enough. And, it's not about feeling sorry for athletes, but there's the other side that you have to look at, where an athlete, from whatever age they start getting into their respective sports, it becomes their entire being. It becomes their entire identity. And it's very, very easy to kind of submerge your whole self into that sport and training and diet, and everything is secondary and your sport becomes everything. So for me, in my situation, when I found out I couldn't play soccer or football anymore, it was a devastating moment for me, because it was almost like I had been blindsided by the fact that this sport that I have given every single ounce of myself to for the last, 12 years, day in, day out, was taken away from me. And then what people need to understand is, now all of a sudden you have this human who has gone through this loss, whether they decided to leave the sport on their own terms or they didn't leave the sport on their own terms, but their identity has gone with that. So now you're sitting there being like, who am I? And that's a very valid question. So for me, it was navigating this. Caroline, for the last 12 years, has been a soccer player, a footballer. She was a center midfield. She was number 8. She was so good at passing the ball. She had really, really good vision. That was what I was known for. That is how I would identify myself. To now, who is Caroline? What does she do? What makes me me? And that was the biggest question mark. And I think that that is such an important conversation, because a lot of young athletes, older athletes go through that when they decide to either leave sport, or sport, unfortunately, is taken away from them.
Absolutely. And for the younger athletes, I mean, I was one of the young ones, so are you. We didn't
Yes.
think that applies to us. And you
Yeah.
kind of have to be that delusional to continue playing because you're dedicating your life to something that
Yeah.
that you're going to stop either way. And so the older athletes, I specifically speak to the people that, you've been posting on Instagram all your highlights. And I did this. I used to post photos, and then you stop playing. And what's your content? It's
Yeah.
like, what do you, and
Yeah.
I know Instagram is very fickle, but it's just an example of something that we all kind of share and we all use. And it's very interesting to see what people discuss and post about, at
Oh yeah.
least for me. So when I think about an athlete and their identity, I often look at that as an example of where they are in their transition. What do you bring up and what do you post about?
Yeah. Well, for me, when I had lost football, I was in West Virginia University. I played there on scholarship, and I had redshirted my senior year, which meant, okay, so the injury happened my junior year. My third year, I had redshirted my senior year, which meant I would take that year to rehab, recover from my surgery, my injury, and I'd get that year back. So when I was rehabbing and just trying to recover from that knee injury, to get back for my final season. And that didn't end up happening for me because I didn't end up coming back from that injury. It was too severe. For me, it was sitting there being like, oh my goodness. So my external world is the same. I'm at West Virginia University. I'm still a part of the team. I'm working my butt off 3 times a day at rehab sessions. I'm going to school, doing my best to get my 4.0s because since in that time where soccer or football was taken away from me, I'm like, okay, all my energy is now going into rehab and academics. So then it's like, okay, I can't complete 100% of my passes in the game today, so I'm going to get all straight A's in the classroom. Like that's how my brain was wired. I needed some kind of crazy goal to attain, which I did, which now I'm very proud of myself of because you don't realize how crazy you are in the moment sometimes when you're an athlete. But my external world was the same, but my internal world was just like it combusted. And I was like, what do I do? Who am I? I can't go and play, every Friday night and Saturday or Sunday morning for West Virginia anymore. And I'm never going to have the opportunity to represent Canada at the Olympic Games, which I was supposed to go into camps for that before Rio. It was just such a mismatch for me. And that was the first time in my life where I was like, I almost wanted to hate soccer and football. I didn't want to watch it. I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to see it. I wanted to just get it completely out of my life because I was like, this was taken away from me. And it goes back to such a young age for me where it was my first true love. Like it's my first obsession. It was my entire being. So that matters too, whether you talk about what you're posting on Instagram to what someone might be thinking about and doing 24/7 before there was social media.
Yeah.
It is a very important thing to consider because like I said, that becomes your identity. It becomes your every single day habits that you do that you no longer
Do.
resonate. Yeah, you can't do anymore.
Yeah. Two things. When that injury happened, did you blame yourself?
You know what? It was crazy. So basically what happened with my injury, I remember it like it was yesterday. I was my third year. I turned a girl. We were playing Seton Hall in the Big East at the time. And I turned a girl and I remember something going off in my knee. And I'm like, oh, shoot, like this is weird. Like I just kind of felt like crunching.
Mm-hmm.
And a few times in the game, my leg caught an extension and I would fall because I couldn't bend my knee. And I'm like, that's odd. Like typically that's a sign of like a meniscus tear. And already in my head, again, crazy. I'm like, a meniscus tear. Okay, I can play through that for the rest of the season. And then that's a quick surgery. And then that's like in 6 weeks, I'm back. Like I'm doing this as I'm playing. I'm like, this is not a big deal. But then eventually my knee started to get really, really bad as the weeks kept going on. I ended up getting an MRI. They're like, you have a little bit of cartilage left and you have a big problem. Basically, they were like, your knee at 20 years old or however old I was, I think I was in my early 20s, looks like an 85-year-old person's knee. And we need to fix this or you're done. So that was like, in the moment, I didn't really quite understand it. All I heard was like, fix it and move on. Like, okay, surgery, fix it, move on, I'm back. So I was like, let's do this, speed up the process. So the sooner I get it done, the quicker I can get back. I finished playing the rest of that season, crazy amount of pain. I remember, and I don't condone this at all to anyone, but I would take like 8 Tylenols before a game. I was taking so many cortisone shots. Like, it was a crazy time just to get back onto the field and be able to move. And I finished season. They went in, they took off, they went in, they got a little bit of the cartilage that I had left, grew it in a lab for 6 weeks, then went in for a big surgery 6 weeks later, took my kneecap off, implanted the cartilage into the back of my knee, sealed it on, put my kneecap back on, and then I woke up out of surgery with like a scar this big on my leg. And I'll never forget it because I woke up and my knee was in this machine that just bent my leg back and forth every single day, 8 hours a day for 6 weeks. And like, you just got to think about how swollen your knee is in that moment, and the fact that your kneecap was just off your leg and now it's immediately having to be bent for the cartilage to heal quicker and for blood flow to start going. So I was like, okay, well, this is a lot bigger than I initially was thinking. But rehab started that moment. I trained really hard. In my mind, I was like, okay, I can't control this, but what I can control is how I come back. So I was doing spinning sessions in the morning, underwater treadmills, again, rehab with our trainers, watching every single game possible. It was this, I almost looked at it as like another opportunity. Okay, I can't be on the field playing, but I would watch the person in my position and be like, okay, this is another opportunity to look at the game in a different way, because in this moment, I would typically think, okay, if I have the ball, I have to immediately play it. But as I'm watching an entire season from the sideline, I'm like, ooh, I could have more time in that moment to turn, to find another outlet. So I feel like that this injury gave me this opportunity where mentally I really matured in the game. I couldn't physically play, but mentally I had this almost advantage that I didn't have before. And I really looked at it as a positive. Ended up coming back. I was faster, mentally quicker. I felt good. The thirst I had to play was greater than it had ever been. And then 3 weeks before season, I blew it out again. I went straight into regular fitness because I was like, okay, I need to get even stronger, even better. I went to just do regular cardio on the track with the team, went into straight like regular weightlifting, everything that you do when you're, on a Division I team, right? Like, these are serious training sessions. And I went back like I never had an injury. And we were just playing a pickup session one day for fun in the summertime. I blew it out, never felt the same again. I was in denial, in heavy denial. I was like, oh, okay, this is going to feel better tomorrow. Didn't feel better. Went into preseason, didn't tell anyone because I was like, it's going to get better. I could barely walk on my leg. My coach pulled me aside and she was like, Caroline, like, what's going on? And I was like, nothing. She's like, you're limping the entire, like, you cannot walk on your leg. And then we tried everything. We tried resting. Now we're into season. I tried playing 5 minutes here and there, not doable. I went in for a scope. The surgeon told me that my cartilage didn't heal properly. It kind of like flapped over. And he said, if you don't give up playing competitive sports, if you don't give up football, you will be walking with a cane for the rest of your life. So it was like, in that moment, I don't think this now, but in that moment I said, you failed, Caroline. Like, you had a year and a half to do what you needed to do to make the Olympic team, to get back and have your best year yet, to prove to yourself that you would be the person to come back from this injury. Because the surgeons had given me a very, realistic expectation that like no one comes back from this surgery, but I was like, okay, I'll be the first.
Yeah, exactly.
That was the kind of mindset I had. Like, it was never an option to not play for me. And I was very, very, very hard on myself, very disappointed in myself. And I definitely blamed myself. Long story short, like, to me, I felt like my body failed me. I failed my body. I didn't work hard enough, even though there was literally nothing else I could do. It was, I always say, my first introduction into what depression, anxiety, just feeling very low felt like.
Yeah, no, I can completely relate to all of that. I've had 3 surgeries myself, so I know.
Sorry.
No, don't apologize. We're in the same boat. You know, don't worry. We're in the same boat. But I know what that feels like, to blame yourself. And I often tell myself, like, man, I could have worked harder. I could have like there's nothing else that I could have done humanly possible to prevent the injury from happening, or maybe train a little differently. Like there's often, and that is you're often blaming yourself for the realities of things that are completely out of your control, because injury happens to every single athlete. So how did you get out of that mental rut? Because you seem like you were down in the dumps.
Oh yeah.
How long did it last, and how'd you get out of it?
As the kids say these days, down bad. I'm old, so I don't say that, but that's what I hear they say. It took me a while, and I don't even think I've really kind of even healed from it just yet, Warren, if I'm being completely honest with you. I just turned 33, and I told my parents, like, just the other day, I'm having nightmares about soccer. Like, I'll show up to training and I forgot my shoes, or I'm playing with the national team and I'm like running so slow or whatever. Like, I'm like, why am I having these dreams? And it occurs to me that clearly I haven't healed that football wound, that it's still very prevalent. But basically what I did in that moment, it was very hard on me. I called my dad when I was at school, and he's my soccer guy, my football guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember just like howling, like going to sit in the closet so my roommates wouldn't hear, and howling and being like, what do I do? Like, it's over now. Like, this is all I've ever known. And now I'm navigating this, I'm far away from home. My parents are in another country. It was rock bottom for me at that time with that particular situation. And I swept it under the rug, and I was like, okay, I'm going to get my master's in journalism, because what else is there to do but set another goal for yourself, right? So I said, if I can't be a footballer, I'm going to find a way to talk about football and soccer.
That's
so
cool.
I was like, I'm going to get my master's in journalism. I'm going to do it while I'm under scholarship, and I'm going to do a 2-year program in 1 year, because I didn't have the money to pay for that outside of scholarship, and I wasn't going to ask my mom and dad for that, because we come from very humble beginnings, and to me that was my responsibility. And I was like, okay, you know what, I can do it. I could be the first person. If I'm not the first person to come back from that injury, I'm going to be the first person to do that 2-year program in 1 year, which I did. I don't recommend anyone doing that, because it was quite honestly the most chaotic time in my life, but I did it. I said, I'm going to be on national television and I'm going to talk about sports. And I remember, I'll never forget this. I remember one person came up to me and said, the job you want is 1 in a million. And I said, okay, no problem. Then I'll be the 1 in the million. And it wasn't easy, and it was a long road to get there, because I eventually moved back to Canada. And I worked, you're in the industry, Warren, like there's the career before the career, you're working night shifts, you're working social media shifts, you're doing it. Like, I wanted to be on a camera, and I'm doing everything off camera to just kind of get my foot in the door, to be in the industry, to learn as much as I can, which again wasn't what I wanted to do, but I was going to do anything and everything I could to get to where I wanted to be. And one day there was a position open to become a digital host for Toronto FC. My dad and I are season ticket holders since the first day. Soccer, football is obviously in my blood, and this is what I want to do. So I applied, had an interview the next day, and got that interview, and my career took off from there. I spent 1 year at TFC. That's the year they won the treble. Most incredible experience of my life at that moment in time. And then I went on to work for Sportsnet, which is obviously, sorry, I know it's your competitor, but at the time,
no, we're good.
Labeled as, Canada's #1 sports network. So that was my goal. That was my dream. And now all of a sudden I had lost football. I had lost soccer, which again, I still haven't quite healed from, but I was able to kind of shift that identity as footballer Caroline into, okay, I got my master's in journalism. I worked really hard, and now I'm going to be this TV host. And what's next for me, we'll see what happens there. But it's just that was kind of that transition. Didn't really deal with it, but set other big goals, set other really big goals for myself that I was able to achieve. And as much as I hated that injury happening, if it's not for that injury, I'm not where I am today. So I'm a firm believer, like, everything happens for a reason. And I always say obstacles are detours in the right direction. I wasn't supposed to be a footballer, but where I am today in my life, I wouldn't want to be a footballer. I'm supposed to be where I am supposed to be. And now that this whole situation has given me such perspective, which I think is more valuable than anything I could have ever asked for.
Absolutely. Oh,
Yeah.
well said. I mean, there's
Thanks.
so many things I want to get to within that. Tell me about something or a feeling that you can't get anywhere else except for football.
Oh, this honestly, like this makes me emotional because I love the sport so much. And when I played, something people may not know about me or assume about me because now I can't stop talking. But when I was younger, I was very, I was very shy, introverted, um, just very to myself, like in my own world, lone wolf type person.
Yeah.
And soccer, football, being on the pitch was a place where I didn't have that type of like social anxiety or fear, or I didn't overthink every or overanalyze every little thing. I felt home for me. It became my safe space, and it also became a place where I made friends and we had commonalities. And every single time I was able to be on the pitch, it was an opportunity for me to express myself. And I'm doing my best. I don't know why I'm getting emotional. I'm telling you, I didn't heal this wound, but it became safe for me, and it was for me an honor every single time I was able to play. And uh, every single time I played a good game, or for me, what was really big was completing my passes or having an assist, because that's something that I really valued as a player. Uh, it was a really big deal for me, and that's kind of again how I would credit success to, is how many passes I completed or whatever, which isn't a healthy thing to do. But when I would get into that zone and I was able to do it, there was no greater feeling of adrenaline and, um, again, not a good thing, but self-love, right? I really when I lost football, I had to really kind of rewire my brain as to what success meant, self-love, value, all of these things, because I attributed everything to football.
Mhm.
But that is what football gave me. That is what a match gave me. That is what, having a good match gave me. But then on the flip side, if I played bad, I was very hard on myself, like I couldn't just chill out. And I always say, if I could have a redo, or if my children one day play football or whatever sport they want to play, I'm just going to tell them to enjoy it way more. Because I think if I were to just chill out, I would have been 10 times better. But I was just way too hard on myself. So yeah, football taught me a lot of lessons, but it was my first love. It
Right.
brought me security.
I feel like I'm talking to a mirror because everything.
Yeah, you get it?
Oh my
Thank
God.
you. Sometimes I'm like, is this too
No,
deep? Like, am I like in another universe alone?
no, not at all. And mainly for
Good.
me, because I say this a lot, like basketball gave me a lot of firsts. So first time I ever traveled, the first time I ever like had someone come up to me and ask me for an autograph,
Yes.
who am I? Like some,
Yes.
it's all of those things came from sport. So for someone to be like, shut up and move on, like it's all good, it's not, So
No, I know.
everything
I'm
you
telling you.
is why like I believe this is important, and why I want to keep talking about this, because what you're saying is so true, and you're being very honest and vulnerable, and I appreciate that.
Oh.
And we just started, so this is
I know. I'm sorry. You're 20 minutes in, and I'm already getting emotional, which isn't like me, by the way. But
good.
you're asking incredible questions, Warren, and it's easy to talk to you. So thank you, and thank you for giving me the space to be vulnerable. Because even if there's one person, and that's just how I always kind of operate out of this space, where even if it's one person who listens and takes something away from the conversation you and I are having, and it resonates with them, that's one person that you and I might be helping in some way. And to
Absolutely.
me, just even knowing one person might benefit from this, I think I'm personally benefiting from this. I think I'm in a therapy
Well,
session right now. So
no, for
thank you.
sure. You're someone who is a passer of the ball. I was a scorer, so
Oh, there we go.
this whatever you're saying is going to be way more beneficial than me. I'm selfish, so I'm trying to get
Nah,
my own, but I'm joking. I'm joking.
no,
Um,
no, no.
much like you, like growing up for me, I had a very severe stutter in London when I was growing up.
Okay.
So for me, public speaking was not something that I thought I'd be doing.
And look at you now.
Yeah, I know. So my question to you is, like, my mom always said she knew I was going to be either a lawyer or doing something
Aw.
within speech, because I just talk so much, regardless of my stutter. But me, I'm someone like basketball. When I was growing up, it used to scare me. So
Mm,
I would be scared of contact. I would be scared to perform until I kept doing it so much that I got over that fear. And then I loved the fear. I loved the fear of going on the floor and knowing that I have to compete. And like, there's a balance of it where the fear turned to a love and an obsession where I practiced so much that I wasn't scared anymore. I was confident. So how did you go from playing your sport, putting your as you said, your entire soul and identity was a footballer? When you stopped, because you had to, of course, right? You were essentially forced to. When did this media personality start to come up and shine? Like, did you force yourself to do that? And did you take the same approach that you had with football into that?
That's such a great question. I like going into those. TFC was my comfort zone. Toronto FC was my comfort zone when I got that job, because although I wasn't familiar with being on camera, I'm talking about soccer. I'm talking about football. I could talk about football to this wall right here and have a full-blown conversation, because I watch it so much and I love it so much. So Toronto FC was a beautiful learning curve, because I'm starting to get my reps on camera. I'm starting to socialize more. I'm starting to become this new version of myself where it's like, Caroline's not an athlete anymore, but now Caroline's interviewing the athletes and Caroline gets to relate to the athletes. And I love that. I was like, oh, this is cool, because I understand what they're feeling, or I understand the game, and like I get to talk about it. And social media just kind of started coming out at that time. And I loved being creative online and with the digital platforms. And I kind of used what I learned at CBC Sports as an associate producer to kind of like market myself on social media, which was a cool little, asset that I learned. And I was just really having fun with it. And then Sportsnet had messaged me and said, do you want to come and try out for this new, or audition for this new role for Plays and Misplays of the Month? And of course, right, like this is a dream job. But believe me when I tell you, I walked into the studio for the audition, and I'm freaking out, because you know how it is at TSN and Sportsnet. There's a million lights, there's one camera. It's a big room. It's a little intimidating because the room's dark, but the lights are on, and I'm just standing on an Apple box. I'd never read off of a prompter, and I'm like, right? Like, oh, this is my big break. Now with Misplays and Plays of the Month, soccer, football is my first sport, right? But I loved sports too, like hockey and basketball and everything else. But this is a show that is about every sport. So you kind of have to have like this knowledge and passion for every single thing that you're talking about. So I went into that moment being like, okay, this is really out of my comfort zone. I have about 5 or 6 people in the audition room with me in the studio staring at me, which I almost rather it be like 15,000 fans watching you play, because it's way less intimate, right? And I'm reading off of a prompter, and I've never done this before. And now I'm like, this is where Soccer Caroline comes in. I'm like, it's time to perform. Whistle blows, it's kickoff, and are you going to play well, or are you not? And this is where I credit so much of sport to like everything I've accomplished humbly, and everything that I have been able to achieve, because it has given me this like it's sink or swim type mentality. And let me tell you, I saw those audition tapes that I did when I first went in for Sportsnet. They were really terrible. Like I watched back and I'm like, ooh, how did I get the job?
Yeah, of course.
But what they had told me is the reason I got the job was because, let's say I would do an on cam and I would say like, okay, and coming in at number 50 is Austin Matthews, blah, 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 blah. They would say, Caroline, try saying it this way. Try saying, try bringing your pitch down on this word. Try sounding a little bit more natural here. In that moment, I had to course correct my read. And it's like almost a coach telling you, be like, on the next play, don't cut in, play the ball back and whatever. It was a coach giving me game time advice to make a correction the next play. And they said the reason I got the job was because I was so coachable and I was able to make those corrections in the moment. So I found that to be very, very interesting. And again, I credit my entire soccer career to me getting that job at Sportsnet, because it gave me the ability to be coachable, to listen, to take advice, to not immediately be like, ooh, they hate me, which totally after the interview, I was like, there's no way I'm getting that. But I ended up getting it because, I was able to kind of take who I was in the past, bring it into this present moment, mold it with, media personality Caroline, with passion, with excitement, with now, okay, this is the comfort zone I know and love, and now I have to really step out of it to achieve this dream. So I was really proud of myself in that moment, because there was a lot of things that did not feel comfortable, and I had to kind of really push myself and evolve as a human being, and mature as a human being, in a sense, to achieve like my next set of goals. So it's quite cool, the evolution, which I'm sure you can probably relate to in some capacity, going from, sport and the stutter and coming over fear to now even being at TSN and working with the Raptors. Like the industry, the craziest, coolest job, but there is also pressures to that as well.
Oh my God, absolutely. Like, I've been here for years now. It's my third season.
Good for you.
Yeah, no, I'm all for it. Like, I'm all for, like, every time I hold a microphone, I am a little nervous. Like every game I do the first 5 seconds, but I just feel the fear and I kind of do it anyway. And now it's like the same thing with basketball. It's like a confidence thing. It's now more become a challenge, and it's like a new game, and I'm here to perform. And I'm, like you said, I'm here to turn on the mic, and like the fact that you said, like, I'm coachable. Someone who didn't play sports wouldn't look at it that way. You're thinking of it from the standpoint of, this is what my coach is telling me to do. Let me go ahead and course correct and figure this out on the fly. Because as an athlete, you don't have time to like watch this and try and go back and do it again. No, you got to do it, and do it now, or else someone else is coming for you.
Well, no, and that's a great point. And also, it's like, athletes can understand that most times, because there are toxic coaches, but most times when your coach is asking you to do something is because they want you to perform at your highest level. It's for the benefit of you. So I'm like, okay, this is what they're telling me because I need to be better. Not that I'm horrible, but the way they communicated it to me was so, like, it was very constructive feedback. It wasn't like, you suck. It was like, okay, great read. Now try it this way. I'm like, okay, so they're trying to make me better in this moment. And I appreciate that. So, like, let's do it. Right. But I had my moments. Like, there was one time when I got the job, we were hosting, I was also a host of Aftermath, which is a WWE show, which I loved.
Yes.
And it wasn't a live show, but it was filmed like it was live. We would record it at 12 p.m. on a Tuesday, and it would air at 7 p.m. Tuesday night.
Nice.
I'll never forget this. I have the earpiece in, and the producer from the control room was like, okay, Caroline, we're going live in 30 seconds, and start talking to the jib. And the jib is one of the cameras. And I'm like, what the hell is a jib? I don't know what the hell a jib is. I don't have my phone to quickly Google what a jib is. There's 6 cameras looking at me. At that point in time, I didn't even know it was a camera.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm like, okay, like, no problem. And so I start, welcome to Aftermath TV. I'm Caroline here with, the crew, whatever. And I'm looking at like, the jib is here, and I'm looking like on the complete opposite end of the studio. And they're like, Caroline, the jib. And I'm like, this one's a big L for me, because I have no idea what the jib is. And then afterwards, I told them, like, I'm so sorry, I didn't know what you were saying. And we all laugh about it now, but it's just like all these little learning curves, right? You got to be able to laugh at yourself. And going back to kind of what you said, that when you hold the mic, you get nerves. I think nerves are a very good thing. I think nerves mean you love what you're doing. You want to excel at what you're doing. You want to have a great show. I think stress is bad. Nerves are good. Nerves means you're challenging yourself. And I think you always want to be in a space like that. Well, stress isn't, because stress is where you start to kind of, like, I think, diminish what you're doing. But nerves, you're on the right track.
Yeah. Well, so far so good, I think.
You're killing it.
I like what I do, and I hope to continue moving forward. And you got into broadcast, obviously, and you got into media at Sportsnet. You did things like the Missed Plays of the Month and Aftermath, as you said. What made you decide to leave Sportsnet, and how long were you at Sportsnet to begin with?
Yeah, so Sportsnet, I think I was going on my 3rd year when I decided to leave. And, there was a kind of like a bunch of reasons why I decided to leave. And this was going into, like, kind of after COVID in 2020.
Yep.
But the best way I could kind of summarize it is, it just wasn't serving my highest good anymore. Like, I remember there was this one day I was walking to work. I had a nice, like, 25-minute commute. And on the outside, this was at the beginning of 2019, my career was flourishing. I was traveling every weekend, NHL All-Star, NHL interviews, my shows are doing really well. I just got pitched for another show, blah, 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 right? But internally, I'm walking to work and I'm like, I can't feel like this for the rest of my life. I'm so drained. I'm not happy. And I almost felt guilty for that because I'm like, I have such an incredible job. Everyone on the outside in is like, you have the best job. Like, there's no reason you should be complaining, right? And I'm not complaining, but there was just this mismatch with my energy in that moment after that amount of time. And it almost felt like I wasn't I wasn't honoring who I truly was on the inside. Like, my life quickly became about social media and appearance and all this stuff. And it wasn't resonating with me anymore. And I felt guilty for that. And then towards the end of 2019, September 5th, I got into a really, really bad car accident. This changed my life. Up until that moment, I thought my knee injury was the worst thing that happened. And then September 5th came. I was driving up north to a conference that I was invited to. It was like a Forbes conference and they wanted me to speak at it. So I was like, oh, wow, this is an incredible opportunity. I'm going to take some time off work, a couple days, and I'm going to go and do this conference and speak at it. And I was about an hour away. I got hit off the road by a truck. The truck threw me off the road. All I remember was going down these massive boulders, and my car, I blacked out at that point, and then my car flew into a tree. All my airbags came out. My car was completely totaled. I got out of the car. People were running to me, and they were like, first thing I remember saying, "You're so lucky to be alive. You're so lucky to be alive," blah, blah, blah. And in that moment, it scared me because when the truck hit me, there was a split second and it happened so quick. All I could think about was, I'll never see my parents again. I'll never see my dog again. And I never prioritized taking time. Like, I want to be married. I want to have a family. And I never prioritized that. My life quickly, just like I made football and soccer my identity, my identity became Sportsnet, TV host, plays, misplays. And then in that moment, it's like it happens again so quickly, but so slowly at the same time. I realized why I was feeling this internal, like, I wasn't feeling good in my position at my work because I did what I did with soccer, and it became everything. It just became my whole life, and it didn't feel good. So after that car accident, I went through so much. I tried to return to work. It was a little chaotic. There was a few things that happened. Really started to feel this like pull away from what I was doing at Sportsnet. And then I eventually ended up meeting the man who I would then marry and start a family with. And I quit my job at Sportsnet. I'm like, I'm going to start my own company. And it was the best decision I ever made. It was a very difficult decision because it's not easy to kind of quit a job like that and not know what you're doing next.
Yeah.
But all I could do in that moment was kind of honor my gut and my intuition and honor that car accident that taught me, like, life is way too freaking short. If you're not happy, do something about it. So that car accident changed a lot for me. And I think it's a big reason why I had the courage to let go of what I was doing at Sportsnet.
Well, that's kind of like soccer, right? It was a traumatic thing. You were forced to change, and you really didn't have any thought or idea of what you'd be doing if you didn't football. So, I mean, it's the bad way for things to happen with a car accident. But like you said earlier, everything happened for a reason. What was your decision-making process in terms of starting that business?
Oh, the business. So I remember leaving Sportsnet, and I was like, people think I'm crazy, which I know that they did for sure. I think I'm crazy. That's it. My media career, my digital career, my TV career, everything's done. And I remember, kind of sitting with myself. There was like a 6-month period where I didn't have work. Now, Warren, for me, that's never happened in my life. Whether it was training at WVU for the national team, getting an education, coming right out of school to go straight into work, I've never had like a month off, let alone 6. But that 6-month period almost had to happen because I felt extremely out of my comfort zone, extremely uncomfortable, extremely like, you want to talk about an identity crisis? This was it. Like, I thought my knee injury was bad. This was like 10 times worse. And I was like, what do I do? And one day I was like, you know what? I don't need to be in a studio. TikTok started coming out, Instagram's flourishing, YouTube, blah, blah. I'm like, I'm going to bring the studio to the house. So I got a green screen, I got lights, I got a computer, I got editing software, and I started editing my own soccer videos. I'm like, I don't want to do every sport. I love football. I'm going to focus on one sport. I'm going to give my opinion. I'm going to be controversial. That's something I never really had the chance to do at Sportsnet. This is nothing against the network, but this typically sometimes how it is because there's so many things that they have to adhere to, right? Like you don't want to make sponsors or anyone uncomfortable. But if this is Caroline Szwed's, which is now Caroline Salami's channel, I'm going to say what the hell I want. And that made me really excited. So I started doing that. And my channels took off. My company took off. So now all of a sudden I'm doing work with Bleacher Report. I'm doing work with FIFA. I'm doing work with Amazon. I'm doing work with Adidas. Like all of these global companies that I was like, oh my goodness, like what I'm doing not only has given me like the ability to go back to football, which has been this like healing, fun time. I'm sorry, I can't think of a better word, but the best way to describe it was it's fun. Like it brought almost the child back out in me. But I'm taking what I learned before my TV career as, you know, associate producer, and then my TV career and my soccer career, and I'm doing it all from my home. And I'm going to, you know, AC Milan's like, hey, do you want to come to the game against Real Madrid? And like, next thing you know, we're right across from Jude Bellingham and Carlo Ancelotti's waving to me. Like, I was like, I created these opportunities for myself, and that's incredible. So I am so proud of that, this company that I've built and this business that I've built and this situation I put myself into, because the easy thing to do is to kind of stay in a situation where you're not happy and you don't have a plan. But for me, I had to kind of sit in the shit. I'm sorry, but that's what it felt like. I had to sit in shit and turmoil and anxiety and stress to kind of get to this great idea and have the confidence in me to create something that is super abundant for me right now. So that's where my company came from and my business. And, you know, it's been the thing I'm most proud of in terms of career. It used to be like getting that dream job, and now it's, look what you've done on your own, Caroline. And I never say this, like I wish I said this more to myself as a young player, but I'm very proud of myself for that.
Yeah, I was gonna say you should be. That's
Thank you.
You've overcome so much.
Thank you.
Anyone who gets a wave from the boss, Carlo Ancelotti, deserves a pat on the back. So
man, that was crazy. And you know what, Warren, let me tell you a story. I'm there with my husband, okay? And like the AC Milan guy, he's amazing. His name's Alessandro. We loved him. We were there with BR Football too, Bleacher Report. And he's like, Alessandro's like, do you want to come and like see some of the players? I said, of course. So it's AC Milan and Real Madrid. Now listen, I'm a Milanista, but I love Real Madrid. So like these are your star players, right? Like Modric, Bellingham, Vinny, like everyone.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Valverde, yeah. Mbappe wasn't there yet, but like,
okay.
Yes. And we're in the media room and all these players. And I said to my husband, I said, Mike, the one person I need to meet is Carlo. Carlo, for me in my childhood as a coach of AC Milan, and then everything with Real Madrid, I said, this guy's a legend. Not to mention, he was like a legend when he played. Yeah. So I was like, I need to meet him. So Alessandro heard that. He brought us into the media room, and then there he is. The biggest regret I have was not like raising my hand. I wouldn't even ask him a question. I would have just been like, you know, you're my greatest of all time.
Yeah, just say hi.
But, you know, at that moment, no one knew this. I was pregnant. And I was just like all the feels, right? Like I was like, oh my God, like it's Carlo Ancelotti and he's literally 10 meters away from me. But he could see that I was staring at him, probably thought I was really freaking creepy. But for sure. But I like was looking at him with this like big smile. And like, again, like I could not take my eyes off of him because I was like, this can't be real life.
Don't tell your husband.
My husband now, he's so funny because I got my husband into football and he's like, holy shit. He's like, I had no idea how big of a deal this Ancelotti guy is. I'm like, Mike, he's a legend. Like he's so cool. Yeah. So when Carlo Ancelotti was leaving, like I was like that and like he waved and I'm like, oh, that's good enough for me. Like so cool. So, you know, these are just those full circle moments where young Caroline would be watching Serie A every single Sunday.
Yeah.
dying to go to San Siro, and then like 33-year-old Caroline is standing across from Ancelotti. You know what I mean? Like, it's just such a full circle.
That's amazing. I'm a really big football fan myself.
Yes.
But I'm a big Manchester United fan. So
congrats, big win against City. That was freaking crazy.
And of course, you have like 3 videos up about that. But if I'm a young person watching this, but not even young, if I'm me watching this, how have you mastered social media? Like, you have a massive following on TikTok, on Instagram. We all know it's obviously it's I think it's a little bit easier maybe for more attractive looking women or attractive looking guys to be stars on social media. I think that plays a bit to do with it, but you've mastered the game in terms of keeping a following, building it up. You've dealt with being vulnerable, being authentic. You've had nasty comments of guys saying, let's stay in the kitchen, which doesn't apply. I think that shit's stupid. But how have you stayed true to yourself and yet continue to build that for yourself? And for those like myself who I'm now getting more into social media by putting myself out there, which is uncomfortable at times, but getting over it. So no, long question, I know, but how have you mastered it? And what's your advice on starting that business and taking on that challenge?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. And you hit it right there. Like, it's, to me, I don't view it as a chance to just kind of post for fun. I look at it as a business, and it is my business, right? Like, that is where I get my opportunities to work with companies and organizations like FIFA, or I get opportunities. I had an opportunity to work for a very, very big TV station in the US to talk about football. So like, this is where that comes from, because I've been vulnerable enough to kind of put my personality out there, which again is not easy. I am a woman in this space, so that comes with its challenges, because again, you'll get those comments like you mentioned, go back to the kitchen, my sandwich needs to be brought to me, or you should be doing makeup, right? Like, that's what I get a lot of being a woman, right? Like, go do makeup,
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, football isn't for you. What I did realize, though, at some point, is that a lot of these followers are like literal children, because they'll send me a hate message and I'll reply something, and they'll be like, "Oh my God, you replied, like, I had to leave second period to check this answer. Like, I'm about to go on lunch break." And I'm like, "Oh my God, these kids are in literal school." Like, they're children, right? So you kind of get that understanding where you don't take it as personally. But to me, social media has been, since I was at Toronto FC, and will be, a form of marketing myself. Like, there is the aspect of like, I really want to post this because I'm in the moment and I'm being authentic. But to me, it really has been a way to kind of gain income, to gain my main source of income, to start a business, to start a brand, to let people know who Caroline is, to connect with community, which I really, really enjoy, right? So as much hate as I get, I also have a lot of love. Like, I have a very strong support system on social media, where if there are some people who are coming for me in a sense, that there's a lot of people who have my back too. And, that's just based on the community that I've built. And I would urge anyone listening who's starting to do that for yourself too, Warren, just be authentic to who you are, what your voice is, and let people to get to know you. I said to this one girl once, if you're not authentic, people can smell that from so far away.
Absolutely.
You could do something like, listen, it's a saturated world. You could do something like someone else is on social media, but if you're authentic in the way that Warren is, no one's going to be able to be Warren like you. So that's what matters, right? Like, again, it's saturated. Don't let that fear creep in. Like, oh my God, a million people are doing it. There's something special about each person who goes into that field, or, on camera or whatever, that brings a different element that no one else has, because we're each our own person. So I would always just say, be authentic to yourself, be authentic to your voice, have fun. I remember Sportsnet telling me the reason they found me was because I was doing this one post-game interview with Gareth Wheeler after a Toronto FC game. And the wind was so bad that like it kept flying over my face and hair. And like, Gareth and I are trying to have this serious conversation about the match. And I'm like I couldn't talk. And I remember posting that clip to social media, because I was like, this is so unserious and like maybe relatable. And I posted it kind of making fun of myself, and Sportsnet's like, that's when we saw your personality. That's when we wanted to call you in. So it's an important, just, if that's who you are, it doesn't always have to be this serious, perfect, contrived.
Exactly.
There
Yeah.
are times where I hop on to, you know, 500,000 followers, and I have oil in my hair. I'm about to shower. I have got pimples. You know, I've been up all night with my son, and I'm like, well, Nunez just missed an open net. I got to talk about it.
That's not
And
yeah.
I don't really give a crap if I look like crap.
Yeah.
My page is about my voice.
Exactly.
So, you know, it's just kind of, yeah, staying on authentic to that voice within and having fun with it. And I swear once you do that, you take off. And consistency, because it doesn't happen overnight.
No.
And
How
I
long
think that
did it take for you to build that following?
I'd say a few years now of consistent work. It's not, listen, by no means like is being this social media content creator and a hard job, but where people don't understand where time comes in is that you have to be consistent, especially if you're covering sports. Because
Yep.
as you know, with football, there's a million things happening every single day, whether it's international, it's club, it's transfer
News.
windows, whatever. There,
Yep.
yeah, news. There's always something, an Instagram caption, right?
Mhm.
If you're not on it and you're not the first to get to it, your video is not going viral, which means a company's not seeing it, which means you don't have an email in your inbox the next day, which means a missed opportunity, right? Which is okay when you work for yourself. Like, you can't possibly do everything, but if you're consistent and you're on top of it, then the likelihood of you taking off is going to be much larger. So it is this like full-time job of commitment in that sense. And again, you have to look at it as a business, not just like social media is for fun. No, it's a massive tool.
Yeah. And then right now, probably the biggest for the average
Yes.
person to use.
Mm-hmm.
You talked about this earlier. You were very hard on yourself when it comes to football, and you know, in the way that you know you would perform. I can relate to that as an athlete. Are you the same with your content creation and your metrics? Because I myself now find myself paying attention more to that, wondering why our videos maybe aren't doing as well as I think they should. Because I think this content's great. I don't give a shit what everyone else thinks. I think it's good. So I always wonder why it's not doing as well as I would like it to. And even if we collab with someone on a grand scale, whatever, it's not doing as well as I think it should. So are you the same? Are you watching those metrics, or do you not care?
At the beginning, yes.
Okay.
But then I started to change my mindset. And I think mindset's really important. I'm like, if I think it's important and I
Yeah.
love it and it brings me joy, there's no way it doesn't take off. And I'm a firm believer in manifestation. Like, I think that it's such a powerful, energetic way to kind of think and frame your work and your life and whatever you're trying to manifest. Where I'll post a video, and whether it gets 10,000 views or 10 million, I'm like, that's a win. That's viral. That's gonna get me an opportunity. That's gonna be seen by someone, and it's going to help someone. And to me, at the end of the day, if it's viral, if it's a work opportunity, if it helped someone in their day to day, that's all I care about. And once I kind of changed that mindset, things started to take off for me. It wasn't so much so about the stats, which I was obsessed with when I played. Like, I would always be like, what were my stats? What were my pass completion rate? You know, how many shots did I have on target? Blah, 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 right? And the same with grades. What did I get on this test? How do I get a 4.0? What do I need to get a 4.0? It became less about that for me and more about having fun and really not caring if something didn't exceed expectations, and more about, oh, I made a really good point in this video and I'm proud of myself for getting that out there. Or it's been a really tough week in terms of like everything I have going on in my personal life. I'm really proud of myself that I got 3 videos out this week. So when I shifted mentality, I swear to God, Warren, and anyone listening to this, the universe, God, energy changes and things start to change. But again, consistency is important, right? So that to me, it was just kind of that little shift in mentality of anything can happen and numbers don't matter. What matters is one person benefiting from the content you posted and the butterfly effect from that moment.
Yeah. Do you wish you had that mentality as a footballer?
100%. Oh my God. If I could talk to younger Caroline, I'd have, I think I would, yeah, my life would have been so much easier, but by no means do I have it figured out right now. Like, my husband has been the biggest soundboard for me. There was a time I was creating lots of videos for Bleacher Report for during the World Cup, and I was pregnant at that time. Again, no one knew because I kept that off social media, and I'm recording these videos talking about the World Cup, scripting everything, sending it off to BR Football. They have like 15 million followers, and the comment section was just brutal. Like, who is this chick? Like, why are girls talking about football? I'm tired of her voice, blah, 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 right? Like, it was just, and I'm pregnant and I'm hormonal, I'm scrolling, I'm crying, and I'm like, oh my God, like, I can't do this anymore. And my husband would be like, Caroline, this is like, congratulations. When you have haters, you've made it.
Yep.
And you can't, he's like, you can't think this way. He's like, look what you're doing while you're pregnant, while you have so much going on. It's 4 o'clock, 5 a.m. with the time in the Women's World Cup versus the time we are here. You're on the computer, you're on Premiere Pro, you're editing everything, you're sending everything off to a massive company. He's like, look at it that way. And I credit my husband so much because he's really kind of like grounded me in those moments. But it's true. Like, that's what matters, right? Is just those moments and thinking that way, right? Because there would be times where, like, if it weren't for that advice, I would have kind of trailed off a little bit. But yeah, it's important to kind of remember that. And my husband was such a soundboard for me. So anyone listening, it helps to have that kind of support system in your life. But if it could be me getting that information out to you, that's super important. Is don't read those comments, keep doing what you're doing. And as long as you're proud of what you're doing, that's all that matters.
Yeah. Well, all publicity is good publicity. That's
yeah.
And no one talks about someone who isn't doing better than them. So the people in the comments, they're only there because you're doing something. They get to watch you speak, and it's not them. So personally, I take pride in that. Before, if you asked me that, Caroline would not have said that, but that has been my mentality since we've been posting more on social media.
And Warren, you're killing it. You're killing it. And it's hard to grow, right? Like, this is another thing my husband told me. Like, he's so smart. He was like, if it was easy to go viral or to have 1 million followers, everyone would be going viral and everyone would have 1 million followers. But that's not the case because it's not easy, right? So it's just kind of like, you can probably relate that to your basketball days. To, for people to take a free throw, you have to practice. Like Kobe, I heard this story once. Kobe would, after practice, take 100 free throws, and if he didn't get every single one, he would start over. Like, it takes practice, it takes consistency to get to where to get to a level of excellence. And if it was easy, everyone would be doing that, right? So you got to keep going because you're doing a great thing. I truly believe when content and what you're doing is rooted in good and rooted in conversations that can help people, you have no choice energetically but to take off. So just stick with it. And I guarantee you, we could have a conversation a couple of years from now and we'll be like, oh my God, look.
Yeah. I mean, so far it's been a good ride. And like I said, this is something that means the most to me.
That's all that matters.
Exactly. It's something that I've experienced, and just through the commentary we've had and some of the feedback, I know it applies to everyone else. In fact, I wouldn't be here talking to you if it didn't apply to you. And you've given a lot of really good gems about starting a business, about your journey thus far and being vulnerable about it. And there's probably people who don't even know any of what you just said. They only know you for, your football commentary, but they don't understand that you've had a history of dedicating your life to a sport. Yeah. And you did that just free choice. Like, for me, there's nothing better than looking back on my career and saying to myself, when I was a 6-year-old, 7-year-old kid who just picked up a ball for fun, I made money doing that. Like, I got paid. Someone wanted to pay me. Someone wanted to put me in university. I got a lot of opportunity from something I just did for fun. So I'm blessed to be able to say that, and so are you. So
yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm doing this because of that, because of that kid, and because there's other people who have the same dream and they have to do something else with their life now. You've interviewed a lot of cool people like I have right now. I'm interviewing you. Who's some of your favorite athletes that you've interviewed?
You're going to like this answer because you're a basketball guy. I have two that stick out. Kawhi Leonard, nice. When he was playing for the Raptors. To me, he was the most authentic, genuine. Like, sometimes when you sit down with people naturally, the camera comes on and you your back is straight, like you're putting on like your best performance, which we all do. I did as an interviewer, but Kawhi was just so real. And I was like, he's such an incredible athlete. And then he was just such a real interview where it was just, you could tell he was chill. He wasn't putting on, he was having fun. He really didn't, he's memorable in my mind. And then what he did with the Raptors to win the championship, crazy. And then Ronda Rousey. So I got to go to WrestleMania where she was in the ring with Triple H, I believe, and I believe Steph McMahon came out. I don't know.
Nice.
I don't remember what the hell I did yesterday, let alone that many years ago. But I remember we were in Brooklyn, New York, with Sportsnet, and there was this massive painting of her in Brooklyn, and she was going to be there, and so much media was there, and I'm like, I gotta find a way to get my mic to her mouth. And then all of a sudden, next thing you know, I'm talking to her, and I was like, she's just so intense and cool and such a badass. Like how you would see her in UFC and then how you saw her translate and kind of pivot into WWE. She's like that. And I respect that so much as a woman because she exuded power. And I remember interviewing her and I was like, this woman's a badass. Like every bit of her, from her answer to her aura to just how she's conveying what she's saying and how she's presenting herself, I was just like, she's awesome. And then also an athlete that you just talked to, Alicia Newman. She's someone who stands out in my mind. We were kind of talking about it a little bit off camera here, but she's an inspiration to me because she's so confident and she's so dedicated and she's so authentically herself that I remember when I had worked with her in the Sportsnet setting and I came out of it, I remember talking to some friends and being like, she was so incredible because she's so genuinely herself that it gave me the goal of being more confident because that's what she gave off. And I'm like, those are the people I want to hang out with, you know, the people that make you want to be better and more confident in yourself. And I think Alicia Newman is an incredible athlete and an incredible person. Yes. So those three, I would say, really stick out in my mind.
Couldn't agree more, especially with, I never met the other two, but I have met Alicia, obviously. And
yeah, she's awesome.
Same thing. I came out of that wanting to be, and, you know, I have a lot of self-doubt at times, you know, so she was like a reminder, like, nope, we're not doing that. We're going to be, we're going to be confident in what we're doing and we're not going to take no shit from nobody. And she's like, I don't care what anyone thinks about me and what I'm doing. And I'm like, yeah, that's the attitude to have, you know.
Yes.
Self-doubt and fear and all of that, like doing nothing, you know what nothing's going to get. You can always do that, but having the courage to be confident and to practice confidence, because it's a practice. It's not something you just have. You have to be diligent with it. I use that word a lot, like being diligent and intentional about having confidence and being and showing up and not being afraid to put yourself out there. That's her. And, you know, she's even willing to do that on OnlyFans. So I'm like, I'm not even on the platform. So I have no excuse, you know what I mean? Which I find amazing. So just to continue, after facing so many different challenges and pivots and like adaptations, right, as I like to call them, from injuries and you know different career changes, how have you been able to stay grounded when you're not in control and when you feel like things are going out of control?
Oh man, that's still something I'm trying to master. And I think it's because I reflect a lot, and I think it's because I've been blindsided by two very traumatic moments in my life. My knee injury, which took me out of football, and then my car accident, which again, like, lucky to be alive. And the fear of being blindsided makes me want to hang on to control things way more. And, you know, after my car accident, I suffered with PTSD. I suffered with really bad whiplash. You know, I started developing OCD, intrusive thoughts, where I was so paranoid about every single thing that I was like, what's next? What next is going to happen? What bad is going to happen to me? Am I safe? Am I okay? Like it became crippling. Like I genuinely like started to lose quality of life because I was dealing with severe OCD. And I would hang on to that control. Like, okay, if I think about this situation, that means that if it happens, it's not blindsiding me. Do you know what I mean? Like I was in constant control of every single thing around me, and I have yet to kind of master letting go. But I think I have gotten better at it. And I do have to credit a lot of that again to my husband, who's like my at-home therapist, who, has really just helped me try. He's a very present person who's never experienced anxiety. He's gone through a lot in his life. He's incredible. But I always say, this very old, advanced soul that he's able to stay present and not worry about the future, where I, on the other hand, am worried about the future. And okay, if I'm experiencing a very good, beautiful day, does that mean something bad's going to happen tomorrow? Right. So in that sense, like, I really have a lot of work to do, but that's something that I hope that I can kind of achieve is giving up control, being more present, trusting the moment and trusting life. Because if life has taught me anything, it's that God's, in my opinion, because that's what I believe in, God is taking care of me and everything is for my highest good, even if it doesn't feel like that in the moment.
For sure.
But that's a big area of my life that I have to work on.
Well, at least you're honest about it. You're aware of it.
I wish I could give you something more in terms of wisdom, but I'm working through that one more. And
that just goes to, you being authentic. I think sometimes when we get interviewed and we ask people questions, we want to have this profound answer. But to be honest, I'm not old enough or wise enough. I'm making dumb decisions every day. So not every answer has to be profound. That's just honest. And I think a lot more people can relate to what you just said than having some wise, profound, some wise, profound answer. I guess my last question to you is, how do you define success? And how would young Caroline define success? And how does this version of you define success?
Oh my God, such great questions. Young Caroline defines success with how much money I'm making, what job I have, how well I did on the pitch, how well I'm doing in school. Everything had a value to it in terms of like numbers, right? It was easily calculated. 4.0, master's degree, honor roll, most valuable player, Big East player of the year, things like that. Caroline today, peace of mind, happiness. If I'm able to be present, a day with no OCD, making my son laugh, making my husband happy. The way I have completely changed my perception of success, I believe, is why my business is doing so well. I've taken that obsession with it being about numbers and money and it almost like being able to see it on a paper, to feeling happy, to feeling peaceful, even if it's a bad week, having, half the day where I'm feeling really, really good. That is how I define success. Because I told my husband something once. I was having my worst day, struggling with anxiety and intrusive thoughts, more so after my accident. And I said, I could have everything. I could have $1 million. I could have 1 million followers. I could have everything I wanted in terms of that, like materialism. But if I don't have a peace of mind, I'm like in a jail in my own head. Like, I will never be happy if I don't have that happiness and that peace in my heart. So to me, that is success, is finding that within, because nothing else matters. That the other stuff will give you happiness, but like for a limited amount of time, right? Like, of course, we can still have goals, and I definitely have goals for my business, and there are things that I want to achieve, and like materialistic goals are totally fine, but I can't define that as success anymore. And I don't define that as success anymore, because I could have the car I want, but if I'm crying every single night before I go to bed because I'm crippled by anxiety, I'm not happy. That's not successful.
Exactly. And the car doesn't matter. I say this all the time. Like, if you take away, if I'm making, better yet, I watch Roger Federer's documentary. This is the best way I could put it. I watched this documentary. It's it's called The Final 12. Roger Federer's probably worth maybe 500 million. I don't know how much he's worth, but I know it's a lot. In that episode, he is crying and he says, I don't know what's next. So it's like, it's not because of the money, it's because you're taking away the thing that makes him make the money. So therefore his happiness and the root of that is gone. And if he's asking what's next, how many other athletes who don't have $300 million plus are going to ask? And I myself are like, yeah, what makes me happy? And it isn't a dollar value, because every dollar value I said I wanted to hit, once I hit it, I was not happy.
Yeah.
It
Well,
just keeps going.
and that's the thing where when you really go down to the root cause of that, it's identity, right? Like
Mhm.
Warren as a basketball player, Caroline as a footballer, that can't be our identity. Federer as an athlete, that can't be his identity, because what our identity is who we are, right? Like I'm a wife, I'm a mother, I'm a rescue mom to my dog. I'm someone who loves.
Yeah.
That is where I have to place value and self-worth and love and success. If
Because
I start placing, yes, if I start placing it in that Caroline and social media content creator and Sportsnet host and footballer, when that stuff starts to kind of, as life progresses and things start to change, TikTok could be banned tomorrow.
Right.
If my entire identity is in TikTok and it goes away, I can't be sitting here questioning who I am,
Yep.
right? Like, because who I am is, again,
Right.
mother, wife, happy. It's so important to kind of separate those things, but it's not an easy thing to do, especially when you're someone at Rogers level who's an insane, athlete.
Crazy.
So it's not easy by any means, but that's why that root level of making sure you don't identify as your career, your sport, is so important, because then you're able to attribute success to other things than just what you do.
Absolutely. Want to end with something fun.
Yeah.
We're going to want to ask a question about what podcast besides this one are you listening to right now? And then we'll get to our final game.
You know what? I don't really consume podcasts.
Okay.
I'm going to start subscribing to yours though, Warren. For me, I'm big on audiobooks. I'm big on reading. I'm big on audiobooks. For me, I love, and I think this is because my brain can be so loud since the accident. An audiobook when I walk my dog or I'm working out kind of lets me go into like a completely different, like I get immersed in the story.
Yeah, for sure.
So this isn't like, for me, my number one book will forever be The Alchemist, because it's a very
good one. Paulo Coelho.
Yeah, yes, very spiritual. It changed my life in that moment. A lot of very important golden nuggets in that book, but I'm also like, I love to go into fiction. So I love like my fantasy books and just kind of going into a different world. Yeah. And I'm like that even too with Netflix, which shows when I watch. And my husband's like, how do you watch an entire season in a day? I'm like, this is self-care for me. I'm like, I love like forgetting about reality and just kind of going into a show or a book, because my brain, it's so vivid that I can see everything in there, right? So I love a good like an ebook or an audiobook, or even just picking up a book. So that's kind of my vice with that.
Okay, let's play our final game.
Sure.
It is called 4-3. So if you win, you're going to get all 3 points. Okay.
Oh, damn. Let's go.
And I'm joking. You're going to win here. Question number 1. Football is, finish the sentence.
The best sport in the world.
2. Describe your life as an athlete in 1 word.
Magical.
Describe your life now in 1 word.
Beautiful.
If every athlete had to do one thing to prepare for the next phase of life through this transition, what would it be?
Breathe. Just breathe and stay present.
It's really well done. So you definitely get all 3
points. Did I pass?
Thank you very much for doing this, especially on such short notice. We have to give a huge shout out to Claire. She's the one who made this happen, so big shout out to her. But you were very vulnerable and very transparent. We've never spoken in length like this. I met you for 5 minutes yesterday, but it seems like this is obviously an important topic to you as well. And I just want to say thank you for your time. Thank you for sharing. And I know for a fact other people are going to listen to you and definitely take something from it, because I have. I'm actually going to go to work right now, and I feel better about that right now. So thank you so much, Caroline, for your time and telling your story. Really appreciate it.
Warren, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to share my story here, and for you to take the time to kind of get it all of that out of me. So
Mm,
thank you. Yeah, shout out to Claire, who I know is behind the scenes. She's my
yeah.
friend from back home, and I appreciate you guys for thinking of me for this podcast. To your entire team, I'm about to go do a big deep dive on all your past interviews, because this conversation, like I said, like you almost got me emotional at some point. It's very healing for me to talk about these things, which I don't always have an opportunity to. So thank you very, very much. And I believe in energy, so I appreciate it, because just as much as you're going to work right now feeling good, I'm going into my own world feeling really, really good. So thank you for that conversation, and I think it's very important. So I appreciate you and your time and your platform.
Thank you so much. That means a lot. Appreciate you.